Namaskar, and thank you for joining us here on our weekly program on matters related to the economy. Today we'll focus on the reference to a viral meme which says looking like a wow. Now, it was used also by the industrialist and the chairman of the $90 billion Aditya Birla Group, Kumar Mangalam Birla, to describe the Indian economy. He said, and I quote, "In the arc of a nation's progress, there comes a moment when you can feel a certain pulse, a deeply impactful one, the pulse of a nation's confidence. Perhaps it's time to imagine an index," he says, "that captures the collective confidence of a nation. Maybe call that index the National Confidence Index." And he said that the nation has found its voice and footing and that the government deserves much credit. We'll put this into context with two guests. For the moment, we have Mr. Kirti Joshi, who is the chief economist with CRISIL, and we'll also be joined by Prasenjit Basu, who's the chief economist of ICICI Securities. Thank you, Mr. Joshi, for being with us. So, do you believe the Indian economy is the primary reason for India finding its voice and feet, let's say, as described by K.M. Birla? Are you also in favor, let's say, of a national confidence index, kind of a wow index?
Well, I think there's absolutely no doubt that Indian economy has done quite well, and it has surprised on the upside, particularly in the current fiscal year. And this is despite agriculture not doing well, and this is despite a host of shocks coming from the global economy, whether be Russia-Ukraine conflict or now ongoing Hamas-Israel war. I think despite, and the Red Sea area issues, despite all that, I think the economy has done better than what was expected. Just to give you a number, the last economic survey had forecasted 6.5% GDP growth, and the first advanced estimate tell us that we grew faster than that at 7.3. I think the size of the economy and its growth, I think they do give leverage to an economy. And I think at this juncture, we are fifth largest economy, and our calculations also show that by about 27, 28, we'll become the third largest economy in terms of dollars. So clearly, I think the size and the speed both are relevant, and actually India is demonstrating its ability to grow faster. Sure. I think what is important is that whether we sustain these growths over a long period of time, basically run a growth marathon or not. So I think all this has absolutely given more voice to India in terms of more weight to India's voice. I mean, let me put it that way.
So all that is happening, Mr. Joshi, but I mean, do we need to have let's say, one single indicator that can probably describe all this and say that there's a national confidence index now in place? And if it goes up, I mean, obviously it implies everything that you're saying. And India continues to be the fastest growing economy, all these sort of things. And if it goes down, then just the opposite. What do you think? I mean, that's what I'm asking you, whether there should be a wow index.
Well, I think it will be extremely difficult for any one index to capture the entire mood of the nation. Actually, we already have several indices. I mean, since you talked about confidence, we have a consumer confidence index. We also have a business confidence index. It's not that these indices don't exist. I mean, they already are there. And if you combine business and consumer confidence index, you will probably get some sort of a hybrid national confidence index. Sure. But the more you combine different indices into one index, I think you will have a national index. But what I'm trying to say is that you can already gauge that through various other indices.
And we are joined by Prasenjit Basu as well, Chief Economist of ICICI Securities. Thank you, Mr. Basu. The World Economic Forum President, Mr. Basu, Borge Brende, says that India is going to be a $10 trillion economy in the coming decade. So what is the reason for India's economy having such a positive international image? Would you consider that a wow moment?
Well, India is the fastest growing major economy in the world for the last 3 years. In fact, for I'd say 7 of the last 9 years. And that continues. So obviously, people are taking notice. If you look at the performance of the stock market, that also reflects the strength of the economy, valuations are pretty stretched in Indian equities relative to almost all benchmarks among emerging markets, and yet the market continues to move higher, despite a very strong year last year. We've had a good, decent month in January again. So what you're basically seeing is an economy that is growing quite a bit faster than most observers were expecting.
Yes.
I think, my estimate of real GDP growth this year is 7.9%. I expect that next year growth will be 8.4%. Those are much higher than the numbers that most other economists have come up with. But in fact, if you look at the average growth since the end of the COVID period, growth has in fact averaged 7.9%. And so what I'm saying is really just a continuation of that, but with the prospect of a stronger growth ahead.
Sure.
Because this time, unlike in previous episodes of faster economic growth, this time India has a current account deficit that is very small.
Right.
1% of GDP in the last 12 months, likely to be 0.4% of GDP in the fiscal year. And next year, most likely, there'll be a current account surplus. So with that strong external balance position, with inflation coming down, likely to be close to 4% by March, April, there really is no reason for the economy not to accelerate, driven by investment in the year ahead. Especially once the election is out of the way, I think we'll get a really significant pickup in investment spending.
Mr. Joshi, S&P Global said that India will become the third largest economy by 2030. S&P Global Credit Outlook 2024 sees India as the fastest growing emerging market globally. Would you say that, this is a given? Is it going to continue that way?
Well, I think if you look at historically, I think India has run growth sprints. It hasn't run a growth marathon like China or East Asia. I think right now, some of the ingredients for a growth marathon are coming together, but you need to work much harder at that. You'll have to ensure that momentum in infrastructure sector continues, the logistics continue to improve, the reforms continue. You also need to manage energy transition because we are becoming more energy intensive. Once you move to manufacturing and infra-led growth, I think your energy requirements go up. And in this milieu of climate risks, I think you need to manage energy transition also. So there are many challenges. It's not that it's a given. I think, but these challenges are not insurmountable, as the economic review that came out yesterday was pointing out. And so India has, at this juncture, an opportunity to continue growing at a fastest rate among the large economies in the world.
Indeed. Mr. Basu, Fitch attributes the higher growth forecast to a number of things, but also to, the recovery in the labor force participation rates. So what reflection does this have, let's say, on inclusive employment-driven growth?
Well, I think employment is one area that needs even more attention. We don't have a serious unemployment problem, but we have a problem in terms of the quality of jobs. So what is really required is that the labor-intensive manufacturing sector really needs to gain momentum. The services sector continues to create jobs. Manufacturing jobs have been slower to emerge, and that's partly because we've done very well in skill and capital-intensive manufacturing, less well in labor-intensive manufacturing. So I think there needs to be more focus on textiles, garments, shoes, toys, processed foods, etc., in areas that India is potentially competitive. I'd say especially Eastern India is very competitive, and those are the areas that need focus and need to really take advantage of their lower labor and land costs to generate a labor-intensive manufacturing revolution. And if that happens, then we'll begin to see millions of new jobs emerge. Now, I think it's also important, people talk about the need for manufacturing as a share of GDP to go up. Well, the problem is that we have a very strong services sector. Services sector accounts for 53% of GDP, and the services sector has averaged 8% growth over the last 25 years. So for manufacturing share of GDP to rise, you basically need manufacturing to grow more than 8%, which is rare anywhere in the world at the best of times. So, but really the missing element, I think if you look at manufacturing, we're doing well in electronics, we're doing well in things like steel. I mean, it's interesting that in 2023 calendar year, world steel production was stagnant, zero growth. China's steel production did not grow.
Okay.
India's steel production grew 11.5%. It is the only one of the 10 largest steel producers in the world that grew more than 3%. And it didn't just grow more than 3%, it grew 11.5%. So you basically have tremendous domestic dynamism at the moment. India is the second biggest producer of steel, aluminium, and cement. So it's not as if India is not a manufacturer. It is a significant manufacturer. But what now needs to happen is that the areas left behind, labor-intensive manufacturing, really need to take the baton and start growing.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of potential for stronger growth there.
Indeed. Mr. Joshi, every report from Barclays right up to IMF sees India remaining the fastest growing economy, large economy that is. So as a growth engine, would you see that, the technology push that has happened over the last 10 years is a big breakthrough actually leading this growth? It's, one could say that it's basically responsible for ease of doing business. And that is the underlying reason, perhaps, for the animal spirits.
Well, I think you're right. I think in the next decade or so, we'll see greater efficiency gains, which means that using the same amount of capital and labor, you produce more. That's what efficiency is. And these efficiency gains are going to come from the better infrastructure, which is reducing your turnaround time, which is improving connectivity, whether it is ports or it is roads. And it will also come from the digital infrastructure that we have created, which I think you were just mentioning.
Yes.
And there are synergies between physical and digital infrastructure. For instance, if you're building roads and if you're also fast tagging the vehicles, if you have electronic tolls for majority of the toll roads, then I think what happens is your time is saved even more. I mean, so this synergy of physical and digital infrastructure development coming together, I think helps. And then your payment systems have become more efficient, and even government is saving a lot of money in its subsidy transfers to people through direct benefit transfer because the leakages are few. So I think, yes, the digitalization, which actually got fast forwarded because of the pandemic, I think is along with the physical infrastructure is going to power growth going ahead.
Indeed. Mr. Basu, so we're talking about K.M. Birla and what he has been saying, and he gives credit, of course, to the government. So top industrialists also at the Vibrant Gujarat recently had said more or less the same thing. The leadership seems to be visionary, and it's also driven at the same time. So it looks like a good combination one would see for this kind of growth momentum. What would you say?
Yeah, I think everything is in place in terms of infrastructure, in terms of the quality of leadership, in terms of the quality of governance. All of that is helping to improve the growth prospects of the economy. What we need is an even broader spread of growth across the country. We need some of the poorer states of India, like Bihar and Uttar Pradesh and West Bengal, to step up and start doing better. I mean, at the moment, I think people in West Bengal will be shocked to know that per capita income in Tripura is higher than in West Bengal. So, those are three states, the eastern states, that really need to pick up the baton and do a lot better in terms of attracting investment and therefore generating jobs, better paying jobs that are more productive. Essentially, so if you look at, say, Uttar Pradesh, right? you have Noida at one extremity of Uttar Pradesh emerging as a huge hub
Yes.
of electronics manufacturing. But why shouldn't Kanpur re-emerge, for instance, as a shoe and leather manufacturing base as it used to be in the past? Perhaps Prayagraj and Banaras can become both bases for textile and garment manufacturing. I mean,
Okay.
those are some of the areas that are untapped in terms of potential, and that is where I think I mean, you've got tremendous. I mean, if anybody who drives through Uttar Pradesh can see that the infrastructure has improved dramatically. Uttar Pradesh may be a relatively poor state, but it has nearly first world infrastructure in terms of road infrastructure. Some of the urban areas, Lucknow and so on, have excellent
Right.
modern infrastructure. So what you really need is for entrepreneurs and others to take advantage of the opportunities that have been created by the state and national government through this enormous improvement in physical infrastructure.
Right. And to take that further, Mr. Basu, I mean, also in terms of services, we already see that services are leading India's GDP contributions right now. And the potential in Uttar Pradesh for, let's say, I mean, the tourism sector, we now know that the Ram Mandir is there. The religious circuit is part of that. Would you see that, a lot will develop around, let's say, tourism?
Oh, absolutely. Tourism is obviously a major potential source of employment generation. It is a very labor-intensive sector, and if Uttar Pradesh can showcase its tremendous location advantages, it has Ayodhya, it has Varanasi, Kashi, it has Prayagraj. So that a new triangle of pilgrimage sites, coupled with the fact that it also has Agra,
Yes.
the older Taj Mahal is still there. So you have the potential for a real boom in tourism in a state like Uttar Pradesh,
Okay.
and that will generate a lot of jobs. So
Sure.
you have a diversified opportunity, not just
Right.
religious tourism, but broader tourism. And as tourism improves, I think you essentially begin to train people to be more friendly towards
Right.
domestic and international tourists. They become better trained in some of the things that enable you to succeed
Yes.
in modern society. So you really see tremendous. I mean, if you look at the foreign tourist arrivals into India, they are lower than the single city-state of Singapore. So
Okay.
it is, the potential for India to take advantage of its tourism opportunity is
Is
enormous. I
enormous.
mean, there is,
Absolutely.
you could easily grow it 20-fold over, say, a
So
10-year
this is
period.
really a sector that is going to be contributing a great deal in the future. Mr. Joshi, now India has a reasonably low dependency ratio, the number of people dependent on the working population currently. Is this likely to increase in the foreseeable future, do you see? Or, people who are aging, do you think that they're going to remain active, getting constantly working till they die sort of thing in a gig economy?
Well, I think the India definitely has a demographic advantage. I think the dependency, every country goes through that, and we have a window of opportunity for the next 2-3 decades to take advantage of the favorable demographics that we have. Now, for that, I think it's very important that we make people participate in the growth process. And how do they do that? I mean, by skilling people, and there are risks to job which are emerging, particularly from disruptions from, potentially artificial intelligence, or for that matter, the manufacturing or economic activity in itself getting more capital intensive than labor intensive, automation, etc. So I think in this, so we definitely, I think, have an advantage in terms of numbers. We need to translate this demographic advantage that we have into demographic dividend. And for that, I think the job become very critical anchor. I mean, so if everybody is more fruitfully, gainfully employed, I think you'll see the advantage translating into
Okay.
dividend as well.
Mr. Joshi, also Morgan Stanley credits India's growth potential to strong domestic demand. Um, KM Birla says that India is, full of optimism, pride, anticipation. How much growth, do you see in India's consumption potential going forward?
Well, I would say that the consumption potential is not getting fully realized, particularly not right now. The private consumption is trailing the GDP growth. But as you move up the per capita income chain, I think what happens is as you move towards the middle income country, the economies definitely get a consumption boost. Now, I think what we are seeing right now is that consumption is getting more concentrated among the richer categories of individuals. And I think so it's not evenly distributed in that sense. I think that can be addressed by creation of more jobs, etc. But yes, I think the overall consumption, as you build more highways, as people become more aspirational, I think you will sell more cars, you will consume in different ways. It's not only goods consumption, but a lot of service consumption. We are consuming a lot of data. I think the way we watch movies is changing. I think the way we purchase things is changing because of digitalization. So that the form in which you consume is going to definitely change. But clearly, as we move up the income ladder and as people get more comfortable with taking credit, particularly the younger generation, and as we become more connected within the economy, I think that is going to promote consumption going ahead. So I'm pretty bullish on India's consumption story over the medium run. It's not fully playing out right now.
Okay. Mr. Basu, how much, has the stronger balance sheets of companies, the improved macro stability of the country, also the good capital formation, reflected in this demand, in the domestic demand, the market demand? What do you think?
Well, absolutely. When this government came into office, it inherited the twin balance sheet crisis. Both banks as well as corporates were in severe trouble at that point after a lending binge over the previous 10 years. And this government took about 7 or 8 years to resolve that situation. It introduced the bankruptcy code. It basically introduced a regime of creditor rights. And the benefits of that are only now beginning to flow through in the form of a pickup in credit. Credit was decelerating for 8 years. It's only begun around in the last year and a half, and it's likely to accelerate going forward. So we are going to see the benefits coming forward in the next few years. Now, if you look at deleveraging, not only was the corporate sector and the banking sector deleveraging, the nation as a whole deleveraged. I mean, if you look at external debt, the external debt to GDP ratio was 24%. In 2014, it is now down to 18% and probably will be down to 17.5% by within the next 3 or 4 months. So we're seeing a reduction in external leverage. We're also seeing, of course, the reduction in internal leverage of the corporate sector. So all of that is making India look much safer as an investment destination, and is creating the wherewithal for a significant pickup in growth in the years ahead. So, I pointed out early on that the current account deficit is minimal, inflation is moderating. So we have the best of everything at the moment.
Yes,
of course,
absolutely.
the missing element is good, strong job growth. I mean, it's not as if there's no employment growth. Employment is picking up, but we need good jobs, and essentially we basically need the manufacturing sector to grow fast enough to absorb labor away from the rural areas and agriculture in particular.
and actually away from construction. I mean, construction is one area where productivity growth has been minimal in India. So we need, you know,
we need the
better
manufacturing
paying
sector
jobs
to
and
pick up
construction
and
jobs.
start
We need jobs
contributing
in
more than
manufacturing.
20% to the GDP. Final word from you, Mr. Joshi. You know, the Aditya Birla Group is clearly saying, looking like a wow after all its market cap grew 40% in 2023 to $90 billion. So is there good money to be made, you know, both for old business as well as new businesses alike?
Well, I think the economy, as I said, is transitioning. So what you will see is that incremental growth will come from newer areas. I think even if you look at investments, I think going ahead, you will get more investments in areas like semiconductors, green hydrogen, energy transition related stuff, wearables. I think so the delta is going to come from newer sectors. I think the old sectors will also survive and thrive, some of them, and some of them will transition into new sectors, because I think if you want to decarbonize, I think you'll have to change the nature of the economy also.
Right.
So I think my sense is the delta is going to come from the newer areas going ahead.
We leave it there. Thank you very much, Mr. D.K. Joshi, Chief Economist of CRISIL, and Prasenjit Basu, Chief Economist of ICICI Securities. It's been an honor having both of you on this show and putting into perspective the Indian economy, which clearly is, you know, acting like a wow or looking like a wow. So in conclusion, let's just say this, that, you know, the Indian economy has all the elements to sustain high economic growth. No sector of the economy is being neglected. The primary sector is adequately placed to feed the secondary and tertiary sectors. Manufacturing and services are increasingly contributing more and more to India's GDP. Services has already crossed 50% of the GDP. Manufacturing is rising up towards that 20%, and it should be at least 25% for India to be doing well. These are signs of stability that will generate employment and employability. Clearly, as Birla had noted, you know, there is dynamism and energy of a young country mixed with an ancient civilization. And with a clear voice and footing, India clearly is on the move. It's clearly looking like a wow. Thanks very much for watching. Namaskar.